moving forward, again, we put up the poster last night and kind of got that conversation started. And really, the voting has obviously, I think, because people are so impacted and impressed with the way Beterbiev handled Smith, that they're automatically like, who's going to stop Beterbiev, But let's look back at the age-old adages, styles make fights. If Bivol is on his game, can box, and is zoned in, I think I would favor slightly Dmitry Bivol in that fight.
Wow. All right.
Welcome back to the RBR Recap, episode 22. I am Alex Burgos, joined as always by my main man, Gabe Rivas, co-host. Happy Father's Day to you, Gabe, even though you're not a father, but, celebrating the day. Even if you're not a father, you got a good gift from Artur Beterbiev last night, which we'll jump into in a minute. But Gabe, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. It's 7 a.m. on a Sunday morning, so I'm great. I'm an early bird, man, so let's do this.
Yeah, more props to you, man. It is a little past 10 here on the East Coast. We got an early night last night, like I mentioned. Beterbiev gave us a gift on various levels. Highlight reel knockout, quick fight. Shout out to my man Eric. I just got a text from he said happy Father's Day to me. He said, you're doing a great job raising RBR. So I appreciate that. That's Gabe, we've been since the beginning. I mean, it's been a long ride, almost 10 years with Round by Round Boxing. So just looking back on that is kind of cool too. So yeah, we've been raising that baby, right?
That's right, man. Happy Father's Day.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I got to shout out my daughter. Awesome, like my daughter t-shirt.
There you go.
Yeah, so she's a winner. Jasmine, I love you. All right, but jumping into the fight, man. Artur Beterbiev versus Joe Smith was a light heavyweight title unification clash. Smith coming in with the WBO title. Beterbiev has held the IBF and WBC for quite a while after he unified with Alexander Bozdik and knocked him out. So he came in as the only champion, and then this was kind of highlighted time and time again, the only champion with a perfect record of victories and knockouts. So he was 17-0, 17 knockouts. Power is his thing, but he's been kind of this guy that will wear you down, and that's kind of what people expected. I thought prop wise for betting, for those folks that like to bet, this is probably one of the easier fights to bet on for the stoppage. You know what I mean? Like regardless of who you thought was going to win, obviously that's always, tricky, even though Beterbiev was the favorite, but you knew if either guy is going to win, it's going to be by knockout. And so I put a pretty penny on that and won a little bit back. So, I mean, if you took our checkout Box Bet Pod for the prop recommendations, quick plug on that. But I mean, this one was going to go one way. And of course it went that way. It was quicker than a lot of people thought, because like I was saying, Beterbiev has been a guy that'll wear you down. Smith can always, defend himself because he has that power and he keeps people at least at a distance and honest. Even Dmitry Bivol, who dominated the majority of that fight, but was also clipped and maybe buzzed a little bit by Joe Smith. So we know he had power going into this fight. It was just, can he fight that perfect fight, quote unquote, like Andre Ward said before the fight. He had to be on his P's and Q's and really do his best in every aspect. And we always talk about this on this podcast. Can you be the best version of yourself? And I think it was apparent early on that Joe Smith, as soon as he got clipped, kind of like that game plan went out the window. And he had some good ideas going in. He pressured Beterbiev in the first few minutes, but after getting clipped and getting dropped for the first time, it really didn't go his way. And it was just like, him trying to land a home run right hand was not going to do the trick. So Beterbiev behind 3 knockdowns got the stoppage victory in round 2. Now we look towards a mega unification undisputed clash against Dmitry Bivol. Gabe, I want to get your opinion on going into this fight, what you thought, because Beterbiev spoke to what some of the people were saying at the pre-fight press conference about his age and maybe that being an issue. I think Andre Ward, again, was one of those people after the Marcus Brown fight that was like, Beterbiev is looking a little bit slower. He's wearing down. But Beterbiev spoke to that. He says he always asks his trainers how he's doing compared to the past. I thought that was interesting that he's acknowledging that maybe that might be a thing, or that's on his mind at least. So talk about what you thought pre-fight, talk about what you thought of the fight, and then again, looking forward, we're all salivating. That's the conversation now. Social media is bursting with comments over, Beterbiev potentially versus Dmitry Bivol.
Going into the fight, I think there were questions on the way in which he would score a stoppage win. Because like you said, the Brown fight, it's not like it was a one-punch knockout that ended the fight early. He had to wear him down. And then Brown had some tricks of his own, right? He would come in. You could argue that the cut that was caused might have been a little bit intentional because that wasn't the first person he had cut. And so with Beterbiev, I guess there were some questions about how he was going to look against someone like Joe Smith Jr., who had never been knocked down in his career. I think it's worth noting that he did have his jaw broken early in his career. It was his first loss, and it ended by a technical knockout, but because he succumbed to the pain and he turned around and they stopped it. But he had never been stopped before that. So a lot of questions going in there. And I think Beterbiev has an underrated personality. Like you mentioned in the post-fight press conference, he was talking about how receptive he is to advice from his corner and his team and asking them, hey, am I doing better than 2 years ago? Or am I doing worse? And his team is saying is that he's looking better. And for 37 years, that's really good. Maybe because there seems to be a relationship between higher weight classes and age. It seems like if you're in a higher weight class, you can last a bit longer, whereas if you're in a lower weight classes, you don't last as long. But Chocolatito breaks that rule anyway, so maybe there isn't a relationship. But anyway, with Beterbiev going into the fight, there were some questions on how dominant he would look, but I think there wasn't a question, like you said, that the fight would end by a knockout. And that's what happened. He scored the second round knockout against Smith Jr. The broadcast was talking about the kind of game plan that Smith had going into the fight, and then how he threw it out as soon as he got clipped. But the thing is, what were his options? The first option is, all right, I'm going to try to box him and be careful, but the guy's a two-time Olympian. Eventually you're going to get caught and something's going to happen because you can't outbox someone who had such a decorated amateur career before turning pro and who is such a much better technician than you. All right. And so what's your second option? You got to go in there and swarm him and hope that you hurt him early and knock him out. And I think that might have been a game plan because you saw the way he pressured him in the first round. I need to go in there. I need to make him uncomfortable. He probably thought, look, Beterbiev has been a slow starter. He hasn't been getting early knockouts recently. Let me go in there and make him uncomfortable. But the thing is, that's a double-edged sword. All right, maybe you can hurt him early, but as you're coming forward, you're more susceptible to punches, and then you have the momentum of your body coming forward adds to you getting hurt if you get caught. And that's what happened. He got caught coming in, and then he couldn't recover. And then so they said that he threw away the game plan, but did he even have the tools to deal with getting hurt? As soon as he got hurt, it's not like he tied him up. He kind of just said, all right, I'm just going to come back for more and 8 more right hands and uppercuts. It was only until before the third knockdown that you saw him kind of tie him up a little bit. But I would have started doing that in the first round. If you get clipped early when you're walking him down, tie him up and say, you know what? Let me think about this for a bit. Let me recover for a round and then go back to the game plan, right? And when it's a power puncher, you could say, well, all right, I got clipped. Let me try again this game plan of swarming him a little bit later when the power isn't as devastating, right? Because a lot of time power punchers, they're more devastating in the earlier rounds than in the later rounds. So I don't think there was many options for him to choose from. It was either I get outboxed later down the stretch, or I go in there and try to hit a home run and get this guy out. And obviously Beterbiev got the second round knockout. And looking forward, there's like we've been saying on this podcast, it's a common theme. This is the era of undisputed champions, and we might get one at 175.
Oh, yeah. I can't wait if that fight does happen. Now, obviously, ringside, we had Anthony Yard. He seems to be, I think, the number one for the WBO. He's highly ranked in the other sanctioning bodies as well. But, man, if they can push that one aside, that's not, a boring fight either. But they can push that one aside, and even Beterbiev made mention of this. He's like, it gets you more excited. It gets you more motivated. A unification. He said he's done 2 now. aforementioned Bostic fight, and then now the Joe Smith fight. Bivol would be his third fight to unify titles, and that would be for undisputed. So obviously he knows how important it is and how much it gets you up as a fighter to zone in and focus and try to collect all those titles, that prestige. And really for this fight, it would crown the man at that division. And it would be an incredible fight. Before we jump into that, I do want to make mention of a couple things that you said. I think maybe a little bit of an experience as well on Smith's part in terms of when he really did get hurt, you know, what to do. You see that a lot of times with fighters that maybe have never been down before. It's like, oh shit, now what do I do? You know, and one common theme that fans like to yell besides jab, jab, jab is hold. Hold seems to be like something that would be, you know, natural to you, but a lot of fighters don't. They want to get something back, you know, and that's not always the best thing to do. Sometimes it is. Definitely last night in that case was not. I think, like you mentioned, holding a little bit, tying up, trying to get your bearings and really get back into a place where you could at least think about, okay, what was the game plan? And getting to that place would have been good for Joe Smith Jr. But I thought also I liked what he did coming out. The second thing that you mentioned, the second potential strategy, which was swarming. And while it may not have lasted long, I thought it had good potential benefits because of Beterbiev's age. You know, was that a factor? Was that something that was going to maybe wear him down, making him box on the back foot is what he was doing. He was circling, but guess what? It showed that he could actually move. He's just pretty athletic. And maybe sometimes fighters don't force Beterbiev to do certain things, but when he's forced to do them, you know, he looked pretty good doing it. And so he spoke about also how his coach, Mark Ramsey, and how his team is like, you know, you're getting to be a good boxer. It's funny at 37, you know, he's like, I'll get there, you know, and I loved his modesty. He's just like, we both were powerful punchers. I just happened to be lucky to land mine first. Nah, that was the only thing he got wrong last night, was saying it was lucky. That was not luck. That was high level boxing, years of practice, precision. Beterbiev, you were on point, and that my man was not luck at all. It just showed how good you really are. And so moving forward, again, we put up the poster last night and kind of got that conversation started. And really, the voting has obviously, I think, because people are so impacted and impressed with the way Beterbiev handled Smith, that they're automatically like, who's going to stop Beterbiev, you know? But let's look back at the age-old adages, you know, styles make fights. If Bivol is on his game, can box, and is zoned in, you know, it was always, you know, we discussed this before the Canelo fight of how Bivol, you know, has lapses sometimes and he could get caught in between exchanges and stuff but we didn't see that Bivol against Canelo. He was, you know, zoned in, focused.
Fights to his opposition.
Exactly. You mentioned that. Mm-hmm. So we can assume that he would do that against Beterbiev. I think I would favor slightly Dmitry Bivol in that fight.
Wow. All right. Yeah, no, that'd be interesting. I wouldn't be. I can't pick right now. I feel like I have to look at it.
Definitely, it's a hard fight to pick. But just for, you know, conversation's sake, for argument's sake, if you're forced to pick now and you're thinking, okay, who wins? Who do you say?
I don't know, man. Put a gun to my head, maybe Beterbiev because of the knockout power. Mm-hmm. But with Bivol, he has a different style than Gvozdyk, right? The one who helped Beterbiev unify his titles. He was WBC champion, if I remember. Because with him, he was a little bit more, he moved a lot more. He wasn't comfortable standing there and punching with authority before moving, right? And that was actually a sparring partner of Canelo in the lead up to the Dmitry Bivol fight. Oh
wow, I didn't know.
Yeah, there's footage. Yeah, we can look at the footage.
Nice.
Someone uploaded it. Very, very quick footage. But his style is different because he moves around a lot, and you don't get him standing there with authority throwing punches before he boxes. With Dmitry Bivol, he does stand there and throw punches with authority before moving and being defensively responsible. And if he can pepper Beterbiev with shots for 12 rounds and avoid those counters, then he does have a really good chance of winning. So I think it's very difficult because they both have strong amateur backgrounds. They're both really good at what they do. Beterbiev is excellent at closing the distance, finding those short shots, and knocking people out. Dmitry Bivol is really good at boxing people and making it a tough night for them. And, for all intents and purposes, making it a boring fight for the fans, because that's how he's going to win, by making it a boring fight. So it depends on who has the better night and who is able to implement their style.
Yeah, and I think you made mention of this as well, when we're talking about different sides of the street and whatnot. Top Rank and Matchroom have shown they can work together and they can make big fights. Mayer and Baumgardner was one that you mentioned recently. So we know that this can potentially happen. I don't think it's as big of a block as maybe some of the, Golden Boy and PBC stuff, or PBC and Top Rank. So I think this fight could happen sooner rather than later. The Anthony Yarde stuff may be a block just because it was reported. I think Michael Benson said even before this fight, earlier in the day yesterday, that a Yarde fight was already locked for London if Beterbiev were to win. And they had Yarde on the telecast on ESPN as well. So, I mean, it seems like that fight might be next. But, man, if they could just some way circumvent, unifications are always at the top of the list. They're supposed to be, what is the word I'm looking for? They're supposed to be
prioritized.
Yes. So unification bouts are supposed to be prioritized over other, mandatories and stuff like that. But it remains to be seen. So if that fight can happen, because then I do worry, if, let's say he has a tough fight against Yarde or something happens or he gets cut and we're waiting another, 2023 and then he's 38, he's 39, then we get into different situations, or Bivol's on the sideline for all that time. So, different things can happen, man. So if we could push for that fight to happen as soon as possible, they're both coming off really big victories, looking like the best versions of themselves, Bivol and Beterbiev. So if boxing could get it right for once, I would really appreciate it. And it would be a great fight,
Right. And a few notes. I did mention that for all intents and purposes, for Bivol to win, he'd have to make it a boring fight. I mean, boring for the general public. I like seeing that. I like seeing boxers. I like seeing technique. I think we discussed it last time. George Foreman's old quote that boxing is a lot like jazz. The better it gets, the less people appreciate it. So just want to clarify that. I like the boxing, but if he wants to win, he's going to have to make it and as the opponent hits harder, the more boring, quote unquote, you have to make it, right? You need to be more careful. That's why a lot of people didn't like the performance of Shakur Stevenson versus Jeremiah Nakatila, because he felt the power and he said, all right, let's be careful with this fight. Even though I like seeing a smart fighter see those threats, deal with it, and box it. And then also props to Top Rank and ESPN and DAZN and Matchroom for consistently making unification fights, because at the end of the day, in order to have a unified or undisputed champion on your platform and your promotional company, you have to take the risk of crossing the bridge and having him fight somewhere and fight the champion in order to do that. They did that with JC Ramirez. Top Rank took the risk. He had him fight on a Matchroom and a DAZN card. He came back as a unified champion. They're doing it now with Alicia Baumgartner. They've done it. Both sides have done it. Yep. So props to them, and hopefully we get it right now. Dmitry Bivol and Artur Beterbiev, and then let's not forget Zurdo Ramirez. That would be a really intriguing fight, because I don't know what he's gonna do in that fight. You know what I mean? I know that he can. I think he can box if forced to, but we know the style that he brings. He's come forward. He's a Mexican fighter. We know that he likes to be aggressive. And how is that going to work out against someone like Beterbiev? And Zurdo does have, he's very strong. He's a big fighter. So how is he going to do against someone like Beterbiev? So that's another intriguing matchup that's in the mix as well.
Yeah, I mentioned Yarde was the top, number one contender for WBO. I think Zurdo is number one for WBA, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, those guys fighting would be fun too. I mean, if we got an immediate Beterbiev-Bivol fight, those guys fighting for, the next in line. Now, I know they're at a point both where they're like, we want our title opportunity, our title chance now. But still, from a fan's perspective, that would be fun fights. I got to mention a couple notes as well. You mentioned, and I thought you would find this interesting. I don't know if you follow Malik Scott, on Instagram, but he's putting a lot of videos out there. He's been working with Gerald Washington, but like teaching technique. It's fun to watch if you want to learn a little bit about boxing. and kind of get an appreciation for different things. I think a lot of times people, when they're watching, they're just looking for like a big punch, not how that punch is set up or the intricacies. You talk about Shakur Stevenson. I know Andre Ward is the guy that we were mentioning previously as well. That measuring stick, keeping that jab out there. He's teaching Washington a lot, discussing and showing videos of that a lot. So I thought that was pretty cool. Anyone that's not following Malik Scott, I also want to give him a hat tip because he did very well in Deontay Wilder's corner in that third fight. I thought he really upped his profile as a trainer. I'd love to see him work with other fighters and do some work out there with up and coming fighters, really teaching them the ins and outs of the game. He's a really good trainer, knows the sport. So that's kind of cool to watch those clips and stuff like that. If you're not following him, definitely do that.
Thank you for listening to the RBR Recap. Make sure to follow us on social media at RBR Recap and visit RBRRecap.com for the latest episodes.